The dance was an event for students, but that didn't mean the staff of Beacon took time off for it. The various teachers, plus the additions of Crow and Winter, sat around a table in the staff room, having finalized plans and responsibilities for the event itself. Osmond settled a few sheets of paper down with a sigh. Well, the formalities finished for now. Miss Snee, is there any news from James? I expected him to make an appearance by now. The Atlas General has been delayed, the white-haired woman answered. Nothing bad, I assure you. His last communique explained he would need to see the paladins we sent back to Atlas inspected. He is reluctant to send them out into the field if they have been tampered with. Oh, Jimmy's paranoid as usual, I see. Crow chuckled. I think his response is more than deserved. Winter shot back. A little caution serves no ill. A moment later, she seemed to recall she was in the company of more than just Crow and stammered. I apologize, Headmaster. That was out of line. Worry not, Miss Snee. The older man took a sip of his coffee. I shall look forward to his arrival in the coming weeks. Do tell him to get in touch before he comes. However, it would not be rude to greet an old friend in person. I will, and thank you, sir. Stuffy Atlas suit. Drunk. Winter bit off the comment with a snarl. Do refrain from antagonizing our guest, Crow. Glinda sighed. Our apologies, Winter. You know what he's like. It's of no concern and there's no need to apologize. Miss Goodwitch, I am used to dealing with people like him in the military as well. Crow glowered at her for a few seconds before a slow smile started to spread across his face. On the other side of the table, Glinda sighed and looked towards Osmond for help. The headmaster seemed content to let it continue. However, a small smile hidden beneath his mug. Talking of, people like me, Crow leered. How's your sister with that guy she was given 7 minutes of heaven to? My sister was not doing that, Winter hissed, all pretense of civility gone. Whoa, you mean you know what 7 minutes in heaven means? Tell me, who was the lucky guy? Or was it me when I was too drunk to remember? Should I be upset? That is not important, and no, it would never be you, Crow. What is important is that I have spoken to my sister and have come to an understanding on the matter. Despite how the situation may have appeared, there is no improper behavior from either of them. She would say that though, wouldn't she? I have complete faith in my sister, honestly. The twitch below her left eye said she didn't and that the scene still haunted her. Crow leapt on it. It's just that my nieces have told me all about the guy. How he slept with so many girls. How he's a player who can get into any woman's pants. Why? I've even heard he banged women your age and older. Winter's face twisted. It started slowly, a twitch that turned into a wince, which soon escalated into a full facial warfare. Crow watched it all with a smile that showed full well that Yang Xiaolong came from Branwen's stock. Crow? Glinda cut into his fun with a put-upon sigh. Miss Snee, I can assure you that while the rumors towards Mr. Ark hold some merit, he does appear to treat your sisters differently. What's more, I dare say, I haven't heard much of his activities recently. And how often do you ask about your own students having sex, Crow asked, wiggling his eyebrows the whole time. Rumors spread, especially where he is concerned. To hear it, his conquests are considered a prime source of entertainment across the student body. Glinda shrugged as though to what could be done. Either way, Mr. Ark is not an altogether bad person. Actually, I quite like him. That seemed to drive the assembled people into silence. From Glinda Goodwitch, it was high praise, and more so because while she was a good teacher, the woman tended to find most students tiresome. Osmond, too, slowly lowered his coffee to look at his assistant. She coughed awkwardly at the sudden attention. It's not unreasonable, she said. Mr. Ark seemed to be quite lazy and unmotivated, but his approach towards combat was always unique. I approve of that. even if his other habits are less than savory. I thought you had a list of rules just for him. Peter Port chuckled. You complained about him all the time. I can complain about a person without finding them intolerable, she protested. Besides, his fights, as showboaty as they are, serve to teach the class the importance of planning and strategy, not to mention the dangers of underestimating a foe. You once suggested he be expelled, Galinda, Osborne reminded. My concerns towards him were always founded on the lack of respect he had for his team, she explained. That issue seems more than resolved, especially after his latest display towards Miss Schnee. Did anything come of the investigation? Osborne asked. Miss Schnee submitted her weapon for inspection. I personally found that one of the dust capsules was cracked and had leaked. It's possible it was damaged during the spar. Her opponent did focus on melee and did strike at Miss Schnee's hands and wrists multiple times, and I trust her to have maintained her weapon to an acceptable level. So lack of care can be ruled out. An accident then? It would seem so. Galinda nodded. It is fortunate Mr. Ark was able to act in time to prevent anyone being hurt. See, that's what I don't get. Her eyes were drawn to Crow as he slammed a hand down on the table and took another drink. What's not to understand, you drunkard? Winter sighed. Is it so unusual for someone to protect a person they care for? Not that, Frost Queen. See, I get why he went so far and felt he needed to look after his girl, but that's not what's been bothering me. I just want to know how. How is a 17-year-old kid, with apparently no combat experience, quicker than two huntresses, one of which was in the ring in the first place? Crow's words shocked the table into silence, and for once, not because he said something incredibly vulgar or foolish. Galinda's face creased, while Winter leaned back and narrowed her eyes. The headmaster merely took another drink, but anything could have crossed his mind. I was caught off guard, Winter said. I did not have my weapon drawn and wasn't prepared to step in. And he was? Crow grinned. The kid paranoid or something? The older Schnee paused and turned to Osborne. What training did my sister's partner have prior to Beacon? None. Impossible. Winter scoffed. He fought on equal footing with Pyrrha Nikos, and I'm not one to take fame at face value, Headmaster. But the girl clearly trained hard for many years to acquire such skill. I personally watched him, and that was not a young man unused to combat. His records say he is untrained. Galinda spoke for her superior. I checked them myself, just to make sure he could adapt. He has no formal combat training. He used his blade well, and more than that, he fought with a free hand using strikes, throws, and grapples to disorient his foe. To be confident enough to reach in against an armed foe speaks of either experience or arrogance. Winter looked towards Miss Goodwitch. I do not believe it the latter. Doesn't sound like a semblance either, Crow interrupted. You see, you always see those people with strong semblances, the one-trick ponies. They think they're hot shit, but they're usually beaten pretty easily by someone more skilled with a weapon. They lack versatility. I concur. Osborne spoke. But I can also confirm that he would not have had training from his father. I know the man personally, and he would not train his son to become a huntsman. Doesn't mean he didn't get trained in some other way. Crow shrugged. True. The headmaster conceded. It is one of the reasons I extended an offer to attend Beacon. He pointedly ignored the rather obvious cough from his deputy. His records show that he defeated a Beowulf unarmed and without aura. But while such stories are rare and heroic, they do not make a huntsman. I sensed something within him. Potential, if you wish to call it that. Or maybe it was simply how his grip felt when we shook hands. Winter, Crow, and everyone else looked towards the man for a moment, and then, for once, to one another. Neither had answers, however, and even Miss Goodwitch could only shrug. Either way, the man continued. Considering his father's reluctance to train him, It would perhaps be understandable that Mr. Ark be secretive when it comes to his abilities. It would not do to disclose his mentor if that would place them at odds with the head of the Ark family. So, Crow shrugged. Train him with some mysterious hermit? Sounds like something out of one of Ruby's crappy video games. Or, a new voice spoke. Mr. Ark found himself involved in things he should not be. The assembled adults turned to Dr. Bartholomew Oblek, who had remained silent for much of the discussion. The green-haired man adjusted his glasses, expression stern. Are you suggesting something? Galinda asked. Only a theory, the hyperactive man replied. From what I've heard of your lessons, it would seem that Mr. Ark solved his battles through a creative use of strategy, literal thinking and tools to even, or equalize, the balance of power. This, to me, screams of someone used to facing opponents who are stronger than he. Someone who has been forced to adapt in crisis moments where individual skill and ability are insufficient. The history professor paused for breath, but no one felt the need to interject. What's more, I would also draw attention to Mr. Ark's willingness to dirty his hands if he felt it necessary to save a friend. The kid's killed? Crow asked, now much more interested despite his earlier thoughts. When was this? The end of last semester. Galinda sighed. There was an incident at the docks. Miss Xiaolong was involved. Did she not tell you? She told me there was a fight. Crow frowned. But not that it was that dangerous. My sister did not inform me either. Winter scowled, and the two shared what was for once an understanding grimace. It seemed that the two relatives in question would have answers to give in the coming days. Jaune killed someone, then. Multiple people. Oblek sighed. White Fang members who attempted to kill his teammates. He killed some in melee, and then was involved in an explosion that incinerated more. Ugh, ouch. Crow winced. It was self-defense. Winter dismissed. No court would find him guilty for it. From the tone of her voice, it seemed that if a court tried, they'd soon find the Schnee's finest lawyers lined up at their door. No one's accusing him of anything, Frost Queen. Crow chuckled before turning to Oblek. How'd he handle it? Can't have been an easy talk with the guy. I still remember Ty's first human kill. There was no need for such a talk. Mr. Ark took it well. Galinda sighed. He was unbothered by the action. Crow frowned for a second and shook his head. Okay, so he acts unbothered. He said, that's just a way of coping. You did get him help, right? You misunderstood. Mr. Ark was not feigning his lack of concern. He was not bothered in the slightest as to what he did, nor the implications of it. Some of his first words upon waking up in Beacon were to point out his innocence due to the laws of self-defense. He then showed concern for his teammates, before moving back into normal life with no difficulty. Galinda doesn't speak out of turn. Oblek said when it looked like Crow might argue. I arranged sessions with him myself to act as a counselor. It's not a role I'm unused to, but his response to my questions certainly was. I can confirm with some confidence that Mr. Ark shows no ill effects of have taking a life. So, Crow sighed. We got a sociopath willing to kill at the drop of a hat. And you thought to put him on a team with young girls? A sociopath? Oblek questioned. That suggests a disorder that allows him to easily rationalize such an action. No, I do not think that is the case. I believe this is simply not the first time Mr. Ark has killed. The comment killed the conversation stone dead. Winter blinked down at her hands on the table, while Crow paused to lean back and append the empty flask down his throat. Great. He coughed when he was done. So, between a sociopath and a killer, which one is worse again? This is conjecture at best. Ozpin interrupted. Mr. Ark has not been tried for any crimes, and there are no records that would indicate his involvement in activity, criminal or otherwise. He lived in settlement outside the walls. Those who flee the law often retreat to them. It is not possible that Mr. Ark was forced to take a life. That is my theory as well, Oblek sighed. From what we've seen, he shows a strong moral viewpoint and a protective streak towards his teammates that might be called obsessive. If I recall my colleague having mentioned, Mr. Ark has numerous sisters and is willing to risk his life to protect his mother from a Beowulf. You believe he's mentally unsound and projecting his family onto his team? I only need to know one thing, Doctor. Winter sighed. And I believe it is what Crow wishes to hear as well. Is he a threat to our loved ones? A threat? Oblek asked with a curious smile. Why? I believe Mr. Ark would be the greatest threat. I believe his cunning mind could lead to the death of a huntress even of your caliber, Miss Snee. But only if you were tempted to hurt one of those girls. Jeez. Crow sighed and took his head between his hands. My niece's team is more fucked up than mine was. Ozpin smiled and took a sip of coffee. Now Crow, he said, I wouldn't quite go that far. Jaune made sure to knock a few times on his team's door and wait for Blake's voice before entering. Prom dresses could be a nightmare at the best of times, as he knew from having helped Nora and Pyrrha with theirs in previous lives. Compared to the trauma of that, a suit was relatively easy. Still, when he pushed his way into the room, it was to see that Blake had already gotten changed. She turned to face him as he entered. She wore a purple knee-length dress with a slit up the thigh. Her long, pale legs reached down to the black stilettos and, in an amusing tie-in, her black bow fit the outfit. Well? She asked, clearly uncertain but smiling for him anyway. You look beautiful. Blake's cheeks darkened as she glanced away. Don't be silly. Silly? He laughed, shaking his head. Seriously, Blake, you look absolutely incredible. Sun won't be able to control himself, though he better. His face darkened at the last comment, which made the girl giggle slightly. Still, I'm being honest here. You look absolutely beautiful. Thank you. She didn't meet his eyes, and instead looked at the wall to the left, but he could see the pleased smile on her face. He idly wondered if she'd ever had someone say that to her before. Yang already headed off. She has to welcome people into the dance, but I wanted to wait for you. She looked like she didn't know why. He supposed she didn't. This was all relatively new to her. He sighed and walked up to her, grinning as she backed up in surprise. Before she could pull away, he caught her with one arm around the waist and pulled her close. She squeaked, but paused when she felt her chest push against his. He wrapped his other arm around her back and hugged her close. He felt her hands settle on his back too, her face pushed against his shoulder. My daughter, all grown up and going on her first date, he teased. She slapped a fist against his back. Don't ruin the mood. He chuckled and rubbed her back a bit. He could feel her relax into him. No one else is here. There's no need to feel embarrassed about a little affection. There is with you. I might catch something. Then you could always push me away. She didn't. She glowered at him, pouted even, but didn't seem willing to back away. He could have continued teasing her, but that would have been cruel. Sun's a good guy. But if he does anything you think is too forward, even if it's not mean, come and find me. I won't hurt him, but you and I can dance for a bit and make it clear you're not available for anymore. How many times have I told you? You're not my father and I can look after myself. I know. I just worry about you. Blake grumbled something into his shoulder, but he thought he caught her say she would let him know if Sun did anything wrong. but you had better not do anything wrong either," she added, along with a poke against his chest. "How you act will reflect on Weiss, and you know she's already feeling under pressure because of her sister being here. Don't do anything silly, please." "Don't worry, Blake. I won't." Honestly, the attention would draw away from him when Weiss started to dance with Neptune, so it wouldn't really matter. Then again, they were partners, so he did know people tended to associate the two of them together. "Yang and I looked at your suit earlier. It's, interesting." He raised an eyebrow at that and looked down at her. A part of him wasn't surprised, if only because he fully expected Winter's gift to come with some kind of backhanded move. "You're not going to elaborate on that? I think you should see it for yourself. It's not bad. Just a little suggestive." Why do I already have a bad feeling about this? A swift but tentative knock at the door cut into the conversation, the almost nervous nature of it giving the person on the other side away. Even before Jaune gently pushed Blake away and moved to open it, Sun stood there in a crisp, blue suit, a single red rose in hand. Is Blake in?" "What would you do if I said no?" Sun's face fell, but cheered up quickly enough when Blake huffed and pulled Jaune aside. "Ignore him, son." She sighed and gestured for her date to enter. He did, and looked her up and down with honest wonder. Blake, in turn, seemed no less surprised by the man before her. "You're in a suit," she whispered, eyes wide. "I'm honestly impressed." Well, I got some advice that it would be best." Sun utterly failed to be subtle when he glanced worriedly over at the blonde in the room. Blake caught it and glowered at him, but Jaune only shrugged back. There was no way he was going to let Sun take her to the dance and cut off jeans. Not a chance in hell. "It looks good," she said kindly to him. "You look handsome dressed like that." Not as beautiful as you." Sun quickly caught onto Jaune's rather pointed gestures towards Blake. "Here, I brought this for you," he said and handed her the rose. "It's not much, and nothing compared to what I wish I could offer. 5 out of 10 at best, but you honestly mean that, so I'll let it go." Jaune thought. She deserved Sun's awe, and his wonderment, and while Jaune wasn't quite sure if that meant Sun deserved her, he was still willing to stand back and let her make the decision. Blake took the compliment and the rose with a smile, which was enough to make the young man stand a little taller. Honestly, it was equal parts sickening and adorable, and Jaune had no idea if he wanted to record the scene or throw up over the both of them. He went for intimidate and run a warning finger across his throat instead. It somehow felt easier. Sun caught it, if the way he blanched was any indication. "Jaune?" Blake sighed, having noticed Sun's fear and rather easily guessed the cause. "I'm sorry, son. You know how he is." "I'm watching you," Jaune mouthed. "Really? It was too easy." "We'll head off now," Blake eventually said, her soft smile tinged with amuse at the byplay between her date and her father figure. "Will you save a dance with me once you're finished with your own?" "Yeah," Jaune shrugged. "It's a promise." Blake nodded at him, then paused and sighed. "Please be on your best behavior," she said. It's a big step for Weiss. It means a lot to her. More than you realize." Something tickled in the back of his mind. Why did she keep talking about Weiss like that? He nodded, however. It wasn't like he intended to make too big a scene. Maybe she just meant him not getting drunk or sleeping with someone, in which case they were in luck. He already had plans for the night, and for once, although they involved a beautiful woman, it was business and not pleasure. After you, Sun said, holding the door open for Blake as she left. The blonde faunus shot a thankful look back towards him that had Jaune shaking his head in amusement. Why was he thanking him? Blake was the one who made up her own mind. The door shut behind them, leaving him in silence apart from Z's content panting as he curled up on Yang's pillows and enjoyed free reign of the beds. Jaune smiled at the easily pleased corgi for a few seconds. Well, time waits for no man. He sighed and padded over to the dresser. The black bag had been discarded next to it, so Yang had probably hung the suit up so it didn't get creased. It didn't take him long to pick it out, on account of the rather unusual color, and even less time to see exactly what Blake meant. Jeez, I bet Yang had a field day with this. He mumbled and laid it out on the bed. The white dress shirt was fine and just about expected, but the rest really wasn't. White trousers, a grey waistcoat, white shoes, and an ornate white jacket with grey and gold stitching across the shoulders and arms. It even had white gloves that seemed to be made of satin or velvet. He didn't have to be part of the military to know it was that Lysian military dress uniform. And a snazzy one at that. I guess it makes sense since it's not like she would have time to go and get a proper suit made. And she wasn't a military, but still. This is a bit much. He could also see what Blake meant about suggestive, since instead of medals and direct insignia on the jacket, those places, which included his left breast, had the sneeze snowflake in silver scrolling. It was as good as saying he belonged to the Snee family, and with how ceremonial the whole thing looked, he could definitely see why Blake had been worried he'd cause trouble. This is going to start rumors. He said, I think Winter needs to realize what the word partners actually means. I hope Neptune doesn't freak out. It wasn't like there was much choice either, since he had less than 30 minutes and it wasn't like any stores would be open in Vale at the moment. He dragged the clothing on as best he could, adjusting the straps, and tucking the shirt into the well-fitted trousers. A crimson tie was hidden in one of the pockets, along with a thick, white belt with gleaming silver clasp. When it was all fitted in place, he turned to the mirror attached to the inside of the dresser door and looked himself up and down. I feel ridiculously overdressed, but damn, Atlas know how to make their uniforms look good. Somewhere, there were probably some soldiers who would chafe at he, a non-officer, wearing what amounted to a high-ranking dress uniform. But maybe it was meant to be Winter's way of saying she endorsed him as her sister's partner. That, or her way of saying he was Weiss's minion. The outfit fit well, looked good, and had a strange symmetry to it, as though a vertical line could be cut directly down the middle of his body. On a strange impulse, he linked his hands behind his back and stood, legs apart and frame stiff. Okay, that made him look like an idiot, but even then, the uniform still turned him from colossal idiot to minor moron. How do I look, Zui? Rah! I guess that's as good as it gets. Maybe it would surprise Cinder too, which would be a nice addition. Well, it's time to go dance with the devil.